Growing up in Rocanville, a rural mining area in Saskatchewan, Michael Karras' struggles with reading were evident from an early age. With a family history of reading and writing difficulties, both his father and grandfather faced similar challenges. Michael underwent testing and was diagnosed with dyslexia and ADHD. Despite these obstacles, he earned a BA and a special education degree from the University of Saskatchewan. Over the past 20 years, Michael has been at the forefront of transforming how children with learning disabilities are taught across our country. He's currently the vice principal at Lord Asquith School in the town of Asquith, Saskatchewan. And today, Michael Karras joins us to share his inspiring journey. Hi, Michael, and welcome to the Market Red Podcast.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Now, Michael, a few years ago, you gave a keynote speech titled, How That Student Became a Vice Principal. Can you describe your early years in school for us?
Yeah, sure. We moved around a lot as a family when we were kids. So we started off in Rocanville and we ended up in Regina, then Calgary, and then Saskatchewan, where I am now. And went to lots of different schools, obviously, because we moved around quite a bit, but it was tough. It was really tough. Couldn't read very well, if at all. Had a lot of trouble with spelling, a little bit of behavior type stuff as well, acting out, impulsive behavior. And it was tough. And, I look back and some of the teachers were pretty good and they tried to help as best they could. And some just didn't know what to do, learning disabilities and ADHD and all types of disabilities just weren't in the forefront at the time, right? Everybody just thought that people were lazy or stupid or just had trouble and never would be able to succeed, right? So, but I also had some pretty mean-spirited people, teachers, that treated me pretty poorly as well. So it was tough. It was really tough, especially moving from school to school. Having to make new friends and socialize and things like that always became, a difficult situation every time you go to a new school. So yeah, it was difficult. It was hard.
So what prompted you to get tested for dyslexia and ADHD?
Yeah, so if I remember correctly, I didn't have a chance to call my mom actually because I was going to call her about this because I couldn't remember. But I know it was around grade 1 or 2 or 3, somewhere in there, grade 2 probably. And it was the summer, and my mom had somehow hooked up with a research project at the University of Regina in Regina, Saskatchewan. And I went every day for, several hours all summer long to the university, and I was put through all kinds of tests. I saw OTs and SLPs and ed psychs and professors and, grad students, and did all kinds of different tests. And at the end of it all, basically what they said is this kid is dyslexic and he's got ADD. And how that all came about was my mom was really, really struggling because I wasn't reading, right? And I had all these kind of problems. The teachers are saying, well, he's not progressing, and should we hold him back? Should we fail him? Should we move forward? And my dad and my grandfather both had trouble reading and trouble in school as well when they were growing up. And that's kind of how it started. But I don't know exactly how my mom found out about this research program or research project. And I guess I should ask her again.
Did anything come out of that?
It did. Kind of like I was saying a bit earlier there. Yeah, we found out, again, the professor and the research team that was doing it, said, you're smart, you're really intelligent, you're good at this, you're good at this, you're good at this, you're strong in math, you're strong in sports, you're athletic, all these good things, right? And they just said he really struggles with reading, and it's called dyslexia and ADHD. And this is why this happens, this is why this happens, and so on and so on. And there was some recommendations there, about what we could do as a family, what my parents could do, what I could do. what teachers could do to see if things would improve. But again, you take my mom, and I remember this, my mom would say, like, we took this stuff to the schools or new schools we went to. And again, the teachers at the time, as good intentions as they were, didn't have much of a knowledge base on what to do or how to implement these strategies that were being, requested by my family or this professor or research group. So it was still quite difficult. But at the same time, things did start to improve personally for me because I knew that I wasn't stupid, because I'd always thought I was just stupid before, right? So that's where things got better for a little while.
Okay, so the reassurance definitely helped and maybe added to the confidence that many people seem to need to be able to begin to deal with the challenge of dyslexia.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So you didn't get the help in school you needed there. Did you end up getting held back?
No, I never got held back. I imagine it came pretty close a couple times, but I never did get held back. I'm actually kind of grateful that I didn't get held back. Peer-wise, like trying to grow up with the same peer group, thing like that, same age group. Also, the reason was, I was fine in all the other subjects. It was just being able to read that was the difficult part, right? Learning the language, learning grammar, learning spelling, and being able to physically read and understand what was happening, what I'm reading was the problem. And that's where things kind of fell. That's the problem that didn't get addressed, I guess. So yeah, I never did get held back.
So if you didn't get help in school, when did you finally get help?
Well, I guess that's how you define how I got help. But I got a lot of help just from myself, learning different things to do. Got a lot of help from my family, my mom and my sister. My sister is younger than I am, but she could read, and she was extremely strong with languages, English, writing, reading. My parents used to catch her up middle of the night at 3 a.m. reading books, with a flashlight under the blankets, which is beyond me. I don't understand that at all, even to this day. But so I get lots of help from her and stuff like that. But I think the biggest part for me growing up was that I ended up using and implementing strategies that I'd learned on my own over time. And that was probably the biggest help through elementary and high school. Again, not because of lack of trying from many teachers. But again, they just didn't have the knowledge or know what to do at the time.
Now, it wasn't really until after your first year of university that you actually got the support you needed to read, though, right? You ended up going to a 6-month program through the Learning Disabilities Association of Saskatchewan. What did they teach you that your previous teachers couldn't?
I don't think I could pinpoint one specific thing on how they did it. So what had happened is I got removed from university. At the time, you needed a certain grade point average, and I ended up being 0.33% under that grade point average. So I was asked to discontinue for the year, and ended up, like you said, at this Learning Disability Association of Saskatchewan through a pilot project that was funded through the government at the time to help students with learning disabilities out of the K-12 system to adults, right? So we're looking at adult students here, and the idea was to how can we get these, obviously, smart and intelligent and able-bodied people to get back into the workforce and be kind of, contribute to society, I guess, if you wanted to look at it that way. And there was 2 ladies that ended up running the pilot program. One named Marla Kowalczyk and the other Sally. I can't remember her last name. But again, it was very intensive. There was I'll say 10 of us there, ranging, from 18 to, I think the oldest guy was in his 60s. And they targeted all of us. We had lots of testing done, IQ testing, all that kind of stuff. And they targeted every aspect and made an individual program for each one of us And over, it was a 9-month program, but over 6 months, I had such huge gains in reading, in comprehension, in writing, in spelling. Spelling, not so much, but still struggle with that a lot, but still huge gains, right? Like I think from the day that they tested me, I was reading at around a grade 2 level, somewhere in there. If you want to, so go back to the grade level kind of reading, up to a 24-year-old adult. So in 6 months, well, but again, it was very intensive, right, and targeted. But they didn't just focus on reading; they focused on a whole bunch of stuff. We dealt with health and nutrition and how to eat properly and exercise, and there were so many different aspects to it. Again, within ADHD, we talk about medication and figuring out the proper dosage. Like, it was so targeted and individualized. It's hard for me to just go, that's what worked, because it was a big thing, right?
And obviously, it worked enough that you were comfortable enough, right? You felt comfortable enough to go back to university.
Yeah.
You end up going into education, of all things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so how did that, your journey and the challenges that you faced with dyslexia and ADHD, how did that affect the way that you wanted to be an educator?
You know, I struggle with this question all the time, because it's kind of like a horseshoe story, because I didn't actually choose to go into education. It was the only college at any university that I applied to that accepted me. And so I think it was just, I don't know if you believe in destiny or spiritual, or if you're God or whatever, but this is what I was forced into. And then again, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. And how I look at doing things, and how I might teach, or how I support others in the way that they teach, I think brings some legitimacy to what I'm trying to do, because I've been through all of the experiences, and I know some things that'll work, some things that won't, and I have a long list of things to try. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? So I think I just feel like I have some sort of value in the education system, and just happened to end up there, and it turned out wonderful. So,
well, that's good. I imagine you've got a bit of a light touch with these kids, considering what you went through yourself.
At times, I can be pretty hard too, I guess.
Well, you've got to be, right? That's part of the job. Now, after you went on to graduate from the University of Saskatchewan, not only with a bachelor's degree in education, but also with qualifications in special education. So what drives you to help others who struggle in school like you did?
Yeah, I've always been like a big advocate of kids who struggle with stuff, trying to get them to take ownership for what they do, and trying to get teachers and parents to understand how they can be a part of it as well. And over the years, I guess I tried to implement parts of that individualized program that I received in the best fashion I could with other teachers when I was a special ed teacher. Hey, try this or try this with these kids. What are you struggling with the kids in your class? And whether they have dyslexia or not, it might be a kid with Tourette's syndrome, it might be a kid who's blind or whatever, right? Just simple things sometimes too, you know, trying to convince people to try things. And when they start seeing success, people across the hallway see that he's having success, and then they start talking and collaborating. And over time, it's contagious, right? And people want to know more. And that's the good part about teachers and education. They're always trying to learn. They want the best, right? And they struggle with the resources that they're limited with, and the staffing that they're limited with. But it's not because of lack of trying, right? And if somebody is there, like I was for lots of my colleagues, they have somebody that they can go to bounce ideas off in real time with kids that I know as well, right? And it just helps. It makes you feel good too that you're able to help some kids.
Absolutely. But do you still see kids in the system that are not getting the support that they need, that look like they're still struggling and not quite getting it?
All the time. Every school, doesn't matter where you are across the country. It's hard. We do so many different things to try and help kids at schools. Parents try to do so many things to help their kids. There's lots of outside agencies now where when I was a kid, there wasn't. The knowledge base is so much bigger now with educators on how they can help. But even then, we're overwhelmed with students and the lack of resources and the lack of staffing sometimes. That there's those kids that just don't get what they need, and it's a shame. It is a shame, but we're doing the best we can. At least we hope we are.
Well, for sure. I really hope that you've also had the opportunity to maybe see a couple of kids that were really struggling that ended up getting the help they needed and not having to follow the same path that you did.
Oh, absolutely. I've had so many success stories of kids that have come through here or other schools that I've worked with, that you'll see years later, and they're crying and hugging you and thank you. So we don't lose them all.
Well, that's good. Can you tell me a specific story about someone that stands out?
Oh God, you're gonna make me cry if I tell you the story.
That's all.
Okay, so the one that affects me the most would be a young girl that went to school. She was struggling, couldn't read, dyslexia, ADHD, kind of like some of myself. Talked to her a few times with her mom. I brought her in, and she was suicidal. Ideology, started cutting, things like that. So I worked with her for a while. Counselor worked with her, mom, had outside counseling and stuff as well. Eventually we came to a point where she decided that maybe it'd be best if she just went to a different school. And as much as I didn't want to see that happen, fair, sometimes when you start a new school, might be a good idea, and I've seen it work in the past. So of course I didn't stop her and supported her as best I could. Years had passed, many years had passed, and she showed up here at the school one day and wanted to talk to me. And I was like, yeah, sure. So come on in, and sat down in my office, and she had said, I just wanted to let you know that you were the best teacher I ever had. And I was like, well, what the hell did I ever teach you, right? I was the vice principal of the school. I didn't teach you even a class. And what did I teach you? Oh, and the poor girl, she was sitting with her head down. She lifted her head, and she had a tear just kind of going down the side of her face. And she said, you taught me not to be afraid. And that's affected me ever since. And it's interesting, because I've traveled the country from coast to coast, talking to teachers, educators, governments, students, parents. And every time I talk to a student or hear a student speak that's had success, that has, beaten the odds, so to say, or overcome their learning disability, fear seems to be the big thing that once they're able to get over that fear, things start to get better. So I've always tried to kind of focus on getting over that fear, accepting who you are, having a safe place for kids to advocate for themselves and know that it's okay, because then they're on board. Then they'll try the different strategies. They'll participate, they'll engage, and they'll see things get better. So yeah, that's a touch of, you almost had me crying there. Almost.
Oh, well, that was a great story, and it really sounds like it has shaped the way that you have moved forward with this, and probably how you handle kids day to day.
Absolutely.
What is in place at your school right now to support kids who face challenges similar to yours?
Well, I guess I wouldn't say, oh, we're a wonderful school, we do everything great, but the biggest thing that I see that's such an asset in our school is my staff and the relationships that we have with each other and the students in the community. We really focus on kind of like a trauma-based, human-first kind of approach. And because of that, we're able to develop lots of very strong, positive, open relationships with the students, with the families, about what they're struggling with. So there's no shame, there's no stereotypes. We can have open discussions, honest discussions about what we want for each other and what the student wants. And we're able to go forward with that. I think that's the biggest asset that this school has. Now, there's tons of things we do. Obviously, we have, K grade 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 screening. We continue on screening kids that still are struggling, so that we can, document their improvements and things like that, and target the areas that they're still having difficulty with. Again, there's a million different things we have. I'm not sure what they call them in Ontario, but we have like an LST, learning support teachers or special ed teachers in the school, EAs, things like that. But I think the biggest factor right now that is struggling for us as a school and Saskatchewan as a whole is just the lack of resources and the lack of personnel in the buildings to implement these programs, because they need to be intensive, right, and targeted for certain kids, and we just don't have that, and that's kind of where it falls short.
Do you think that part of the equation there might be people not having a true awareness of dyslexia and how to deal with it?
I don't know if it's the true awareness of it. I think everybody is aware. They have the knowledge. I think we have the know-how. We just don't have the personnel to implement it at a public school place, right? Like, I know that the Learning Disability Association argued with me, and it worked, right? I went to a fundraiser here for a private school that 10 years ago started in a woman's basement, and I watched 3 kids get up that have been going there for the last 6 or 7 years, graduated from high school last year, and without that private school, again, they would have been lost, right? So there is things out there, but not everybody can access them, and it's not in the public system. It's through nonprofit organizations or private schools, and not to talk. We need these nonprofit like Dyslexia Canada, Learning Disability Associations. We need these places to help advocate and support for us as well.
What do we as society stand to lose without properly funding dyslexia education?
You could lose people just like myself, right? I ended up being, as far as I'm concerned, a pretty good guy and a pretty good educator and a pretty good vice principal. And that's always my fear, right? What if I didn't get that support? And if I didn't get that support, all these other kids that didn't get it, what happens to them? Where do they go? Are they jail? Are they dead? Are they depressed and suicidal? Are they homeless? What are they doing? Are they stuck in a job they hate every day? Like, that's not a life for anybody, right? So
it sounds like a big part of this too is that you have to be honest about it and accept the disability and that you're going to do something about it, and then get the kind of the support and the confidence that you need to move forward.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's hard to accept for anybody, right? Even my mom and several moms I've talked to over the years, they feel like it's their fault, right? It's nobody's fault. And it's hard to watch your mom blame yourself, and then you blame yourself for making your mom. Like, there's so much blame and disappointment and sadness that it's hard to get out of. But, once you accept it and there's ways to work with it. There's ways to work around it. There's ways to beat it, right? Does it go away? No. Does it get way better? Absolutely. And I think the funnest thing with me is that even my kids make fun of me from time to time. And we laugh and we have a good time, and because it's fun. It's funny. I make mistakes just like anybody else, but sometimes mine are a little better than everybody's.
But now you accept it.
Absolutely. Why not? It's fun.
You can laugh at it now.
That's right.
So when you're able to do that now, that must help you to be a better role model for people, because then you're able to say, I had this. I've dealt with this. You can do this.
Absolutely. I don't teach special ed anymore. Now that I'm in a vice principal spot, I ended up teaching industrial arts, so woodworking, welding, and things like that. And almost every year I start my class with any new kids that come in. Let's go around the room, talk about who we are, find out who we are, all that kind of stuff, your interests, what you struggle with. And I always start with myself, and I tell them, I'm Michael Karras, I'm the vice principal here. Can't read worth a darn, and my spelling's even worse. So if you struggle with reading or any kind of academic stuff, let's get it out and open now, and we'll see what we can do to help each other.
Well, once you know how to read, it really opens up the world to you, doesn't it?
Sure does.
So what are you most proud of in your career?
The thing that I'm most proud about, I think, would be how I've come to be who I am. I have a fantastic family, wife and kids, home. I have a wonderful, parents. I have a great job with fantastic colleagues. I think that's what I'm most proud of. I didn't think I would ever get that. I always thought I'd be, I think I mentioned it earlier, stuck in a job I hated every day. Nobody wants that, right? Alone, I didn't want to be alone. I wanted to be with somebody. And having relationships and being dyslexic and ADD, it's difficult. And my wife was here, she'd tell you.
But a big part of that too, though, is you eventually were able to kind of accept that in yourself. So then I would imagine that makes relationships easier. If you tried to hide it, keep hiding it, it eventually always catches up to you, right?
Of course. And I'm pretty open about it with everybody. I meet new kids, meet new parents coming out of school, a new superintendent. If we get, it's the first thing I tell them. I got a learning disability. I can't read. Send me emails. I might misread it. You know what I mean? There's so many things. I'm very open about it. Same with my wife. Very open about it, and we talk about it. We laugh about it. We kid about it, and we don't look at it as a flaw. She sees it more as an annoyance than anything, I think. But we laugh about it and have a good time, and it just makes it easier to have a conversation with somebody. Why do you want to lie to them all the time, right? If it's supposed to be something you love, you want to have a relationship with them, you should be open about it.
When you had children of your own, were you worried about them perhaps getting dyslexia?
I was a little bit worried. Both of my daughters, fantastic, super smart, totally different than each other. The oldest one, we were a little bit worried about her at the beginning. She took French immersion, so she was having some difficulty reading English and French at the same time. We had a quick test done on her through a colleague of mine, just informal, to see what we could figure out. Her special ed background and mine, and we kind of noticed the trend that she was having, and it wasn't dyslexia. So it kind of put the relief and stuff. So, but again, we were able to target what her problem was and deal with it accordingly. And I couldn't be prouder. Both my kids are incredibly smart and do so well at school compared to what I used to do.
Well, it must have been a real relief for you to see them reading for the first time.
Oh, well, and so young. When they could read better than I can when they were 7, 8 years old. It's amazing. It's fantastic.
That's so great.
Yeah.
Now, when you were 8 years old, you were obviously in a very different situation. And if you could go back to that time now and kind of share some knowledge with your 8-year-old self, what do you think you would say?
You know, I touched on it with that story. I think it would be the idea of fear. I think that it's okay to not be afraid. It's okay not to be afraid. You can go about doing this stuff. You just have to tell people. You have to be in charge of it. You have to be responsible for it. You have to take ownership for it. It's okay to make mistakes. Nobody's going to crash on you. And if they do, they're not worth it. Let's move on to the next person and get the help where we need. If you can get over that fear, that's the key right there. Now, that's not to say everything gets better, right? Immediately. It's just one step. And, but once you can get over that fear, once you can take that kind of initial ownership, start accepting help, start asking for help, everybody starts playing their role, things can get better.
Words of wisdom, Michael. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Really appreciate you sharing your story and your time today on the Market Red podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you for having that.